We're talking about this report that came out yesterday that's looking at productivity and all, and we want to have that conversation now. The time use survey report by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, in partnership with UN Women and Oxfam Kenya. We're joined by two people in the studio now. Maureen Otieno is a gender justice and women rights strategist at Oxfam Kenya, and Oganga Caneble is program specialist, gender statistics advisor at UN Women. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Good to have you here. Karibuni sana. You are spending your time wisely by being here, and we'll talk about time use and what it exactly means. But to welcome you to the show, City has the day's proverb. This week's proverbs are from the Republic
of Rwanda.
Okay.
The Republic of Rwanda. Did you know that Rwanda is the most densely populated mainland African country?
Did you, Oganga?
Okay, could you repeat?
Did you know that Rwanda is the most densely populated mainland country in Africa?
That is an interesting fact.
It is.
Yeah.
And it is probably the fifth most densely populated country on the planet. Macau is first, then Monaco, then Singapore, Hong Kong, Gibraltar. Tiny little pieces of earth with very many people. Rwanda has 13 million people.
Yeah, looking at the size of Rwanda, I think I would agree with that. Yeah. The land area, that is.
Looks probable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Now the proverb. If you shake a dog, you shake its owner. Now, don't ask me why somebody would want to catch a dog to shake it. We're not going there.
And it's not puppy dog.
No.
It's dog.
Dog, bow wow, big dog, yes.
Oh, wow.
Bite you if you joke, dog, yes.
Bow wow. Hey, City.
You're bougie this morning.
We know dog as woof woof. All right. If you shake a dog, you shake its owner.
Yes.
You know, when Maureen had that, she looked at you like, huh?
Why are we shaking dogs?
That was the first question, and I think I sat back and I was like, a man's best friend, they've always said is a dog, something of the sort. I said, why are we shaking this? But of course you had to meet the owner, definitely. Yes.
If you end up doing that.
So
what do you think the deeper meaning of this proverb would be?
Well, a quick thought around that is, of course, the relationship that has been thought through in life with the man and the dog. You know, for those who are dog lovers, I've seen their dog moms nowadays. I think it's just about that relationship. And of course, if you are going to really go ahead and destabilize that relationship, then of course, essentially, you would have to meet its owner. But it's really interesting. I'd really want to know more around why anyone is shaking dogs, but quite interesting. Yes.
Oganga, what's yours?
I'm curious really to get to the deeper meaning of this saying, because, of course, just like also my colleague has mentioned, in most cases, you'll find that the kind of relationship between a dog and its owner, the moment you get to attack the dog, or lay your hands on the dog, definitely the next minute the owner will be concerned. Because again, the dog, beyond being, man's best friend, there's also the security that it provides to the owner. So that would be also like a matter of fact that you'll be infringing into the space of the owner of the dog. Yeah.
City?
See, the beauty of an interpretation is that it's actually your interpretation, so you can't possibly be wrong.
Interesting.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Even if you'd said the dog was howling at the moon. And,
Bow wow.
The dog was bow wowing at the moon.
It has an owner. Even if it was a wild dog.
It doesn't matter. It has an owner.
It doesn't know.
Yes. Even if it's a spindly looking dog that sometimes imitates a goat, it still has an owner. But believe me,
No, there are not.
There are some mongrels that are very difficult to define from a distance. You're not really sure what you're seeing. See, These individuals who are laughing know what I'm saying. You are thinking of these dogs that are looked after by Kenya Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Sort of like dogs which even have a name, have a list of grandfather, grandmother, that sort of thing. No, I'm talking about dog. Yeah, okay.
Simba, Bosco.
Yes, Bosco.
Tusker.
Yes,
Yes.
Tusker. Those ones. Yes.
Tusker.
Yes, that's her name.
I love it.
Or would you prefer Pilsner?
What was that comic that had a guy had a dog called Tusker? What was it? I don't remember it.
In
No,
this,
there was a comic. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right.
What was it? Was it Kazibure? It wasn't Kazibure. Anyway, let's get to the conversation.
Sure.
So yesterday there was a release. There was a release of Kenya's first ever time use survey report, and this is in conjunction with Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, UN Women, and Oxfam Kenya. Let me begin with you, Oganga.
Yes.
First? Let's even define what is time use,
Yeah.
and what is this report, and what was this survey?
Okay, thank you, Eric. Time use surveys normally provide comprehensive and detailed information on how individuals spend their time, and in most cases, either on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. And so it's really, a moment, of glory for us. Because this is a survey that we began to plan for it way back in 2017. And again, noting that it's really a new kind of concept within the country. It really took us time, even for the National Statistics Office, to really get to appreciate, and even for the various stakeholders at the national level, to really get to appreciate and see the need for us to be able to implement this survey. So the Kenya Time Use Survey, finally, with support from various stakeholders, that is the World Bank, the UN Women, and also, of course, the government, was implemented. And one of the objectives of undertaking this survey, one was for us to be able to really understand what are the gender differences, especially in terms of time use patterns on unpaid domestic and care work. The other thing again was that this survey again, looking at what has been done in other jurisdictions, was basically also to enable us to inform policies, and various programs that are meant to accelerate, gender equality and women empowerment. Then the last one is also the fact that when you look at the conventional system of national accounts, which is used to compile the national accounts income, you'll find that this is an area that is normally not measured. And so with this data, we shall be able now to incorporate within the national accounting system the measurement of the unpaid household services, so that then we are able to see what is the contribution, of what women do in terms of the unpaid care and domestic work to the national GDP.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm looking at the presentation that came out of this,
Yes.
and classification of time use activities undertaken by the general population during 24 hours of a day is based on 3-level hierarchy. Okay?
Yes.
And I see the hierarchies are: number 1, the system of national accounts, productive activities, major division 1 and 2. 1 is employment and related activities. Division 2 is production of goods for own final use. And then there is non-system of national accounts, productive activities, Division 3, 4, and 5. 3 is unpaid domestic services for household and family members, unpaid caregiving services for household and family members, and unpaid volunteer and trainee work. So this is something that people are doing unpaid, and they're giving care or such to members of the family. Then the other category is learning activities, and then we have other non-productive activities. Non-productive activities are like social, communication, participation, religion, culture, leisure, mass media and sports activities, self-care and maintenance. All these are being called non-productive activities. Explain why we have productive category 1 and
Yes.
2, and then we have non-productive.
Okay, thank you. So when you look at the conventional system of national accounts, In most cases, this is a framework that is used to compile the national accounts income, where you're able to look at the activities that are normally, in the market economy, that are transactional in nature. But then when you come to activities, and in this case, I call them the unpaid household services. So these are activities that, within the framework, we have two levels of how to define the various activities. So one, we have the activities that fall within the production boundary, where we are able to quantify the value and measure in terms of, what is the economic value. And especially when you look at the transactional, exchange that is done with regards to these activities. But then the other part is the general production boundary. So in the general production boundary, when you look at the forms of work, we have the forms of work in terms of what is done for the household and what is done for others. So within what is done for the households, you have activities that are done for own final use by the household, and also those that are done for use by others. So within those that are done for own final use by the household, you have the goods and services. Okay, and when you look at the goods that are done or produced by the household for their own final use, these are activities that you can be able to quantify and measure their value in terms of the transactions that can be done at the market economy. But then when you now come to the services that are done within the household, this is now where we have the unpaid household services. An example.
It's okay.
Sorry for that.
It is productive.
Sorry for that. Yeah. So when you look at the services that are done for, on or final use within the household, this is where we have the unpaid domestic services. An example like, washing of utensils, preparation of meals, taking care of the children. So these are the households that the activities that form or constitute unpaid household services. And then, of course, we also have within the activities that are done for others, the employment and related activities, the activities that you do for work or for profit, like what we are now doing here, where at the end of the month, you are paid. Or if it's a business that you're doing within, the household enterprise, you are running a kiosk or a business and all that, you're able to generate profit out of it. Then, of course, we also have the volunteer work. So the volunteer work, you have the services that, you either do them to produce goods. And if you're able to produce goods, then that means that this is a quantifiable, kind of activity that forms part of the productive activities within the system of national accounts.
Okay.
And then, of course, lastly, we have the volunteer services, which are done for other households and family. So they are done for, people outside the household. And so these are the activities that then now they form part of what now we call also the unpaid household services.
Okay.
So that is how then you are able to now ensure that within the system of national accounts framework, for those activities that are not, having the market value, transactional value attached to them, then within this framework, we now use a household satellite account, which now will enable us to be able now to measure what is the economic value of the unpaid household and domestic services. Yeah.
Okay. So right now, how you're able to measure productivity is if there's some kind of compensation for that thing that you have done.
Okay.
So is that how you're able to measure? And so now in the space where you're saying there is unpaid work that's being done, are we also saying then that points, or okay, let me ask a question like this. Can productivity only be measured if there is some kind of compensation that has been applied to it?
Yeah, so thank you. Just also wanted to make it further simpler that for those activities that you cannot delegate. So let's say, for instance, is Eric able to stay out of work and have his other colleague do his job?
Yeah.
So for those activities that you're able to delegate to someone else, and they'll be able to do it and deliver or achieve the same results. So in simple terms, those are the productive activities.
Okay.
But then any activity that you are not able to delegate, like eating, sleeping, learning, I cannot learn on behalf of you for you to be able to, get to understand or appreciate whatever I was, reading on my own. Eating, for instance, I cannot eat on your behalf. You have to do it yourself. And even sleeping. So in simple terms, that is then how you're able to draw the boundary between the productive activities and the non-productive activities.
Is that conclusive? Because I can imagine an activity like if a mother is breastfeeding her child when a child is born, and a woman is spending very many hours breastfeeding that child. That is highly productive. That without it, that child will die. But she cannot delegate that responsibility to somebody else.
Yes.
So how can that not be?
Can the
productive?
child feed without breastfeeding?
If that's
Can
the
a child
only source
still
of
get
sustenance?
nutrition? Yeah.
Yes. So, of course, that is why I began by defining the scope of the system of national accounts framework, where, of course, for what now the mother is able to do to take care of the child. So these are the activities that form within the general production boundary.
Okay.
Because they are services, for instance, what the mother is doing, it's a service that the mother is providing to the child. For instance, if you have sick people within the family, when you're taking care of them, or even the elderly. So those are the services that you are now providing for the members of your household. And so these are the activities that then, within the general production boundary, we want to be able to measure. Because if you look at those activities, for instance, there's time you spend to do them, which, if you look at the opportunity cost, if you are to, stay away from doing that work, for instance, you would be able to be involved in other productive activities, for instance, like in employment kind of services, or even to be doing other things like producing goods, for the market. And yes.
Okay.
Maureen, so it's not getting clearer. Okay.
Yes.
So for a long time, we've been looking at category 1 and 2 as what we define productivity. You are employed, or you're self-employed, you're employed by somebody else, you're doing some work, that is productivity 1. You are going to produce goods and services or farming, that's productivity 2. And then we have disregarded this other one. If you are at home and you're taking care of your family, if you're at home and you're taking care of somebody who's ailing, if those ones have not been considered productive activities, and now we're including them. But is that, like Ndu was asking, is that really conclusive? Would you say that the time you take on a break is now considered unproductive? Because also the other mindset is when you say unproductive, we are putting a synonym here of idle.
So one of the things, and thank you for that question, as my colleague was laying the foundation, one of the things we need to appreciate is that when you talk about work, we have defined work in a very capitalistic nature over the years. And work has been looked at in terms of actually, are you getting paid or remunerated for this task that you're doing? However, when we talk about unpaid care and domestic work in this context, we look at it in terms of work that is constantly undervalued, because we have been socialized in society to see that as part of what a woman has been taught to do. For instance, you have been taught to cook, you have been taught to clean, that has come out of the agents of socialization. But what we don't appreciate also is that women through that work are actually subsidizing the economy because of their contribution in their care roles and their responsibilities. And I want to ask ourselves as a country, if today our domestic managers decided that they are not going to report to work, they are not going to come in and support our work, what would be the resultant effect for those of us who are coming to work in what we call productive work, informal employment? So
That is also productive, though.
yes,
Maureen.
it's still productive.
Because we pay them.
Yes, we pay them, but there are those who are working for us, example, for us as carers,
Yes.
who are not recognized also in terms of the work that they do. So what the key ask is also, as we look at the Kenya Time Use Survey and we talk about unpaid care and domestic work, is that let us recognize that women are subsidizing this economy. Let us also recognize that care work is work and should be valued in that it contributes to the GDP of this country, and it's recognized as a contribution that actually will lead to a social and a development good. So when we talk about their contribution, I think the most important question for us to ask ourselves, what is work? Is care work? Isn't it? Yes, and that is why these findings are very, very important for us as a country, because we want to value the contribution of carers. We want to value the contribution of the young boys. Quite interestingly, as we get to delve further into this report, you see that very young ages, from the age of 15, are spending quite a considerable amount of time, 12 to around 12 hours, 12 to 12.2 hours in care responsibilities. And again, we ask ourselves, this is all as a subset of our socialization. So back to what I said is that women are subsidizing this economy, and it's important that we actually look at care work as work.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I ask the question? No, you want to say something?
Yes, I wanted to add, thank you, Maureen. I just wanted to add the fact that the unpaid care and domestic work that mostly women are the majority who do it, it contributes to the well-being of the family or at the household level. Because, for instance, if you never had somebody to undertake these duties for you, one way or the other, if you have the young ones, it becomes very difficult. And you'll even see that for a young mother, this can even interrupt, her from being able to do her job. And even in terms of health, the well-being of the household, because then they are really able to ensure that even for the working family members of the household, they're able to, spend their time, have a number of duties like, preparing food, taking care of the kids and all that done on their behalf, so that they're able to now create time to be in employment kind of activities. And so this is why we feel that the role that women play, whereby you find the society has already, assigned these gender roles, which again, in the end, inconvenience women from being able now to participate in other more productive activities like employment, being in the political life, and even being able to, create more time for education and the like.
Let's take a break, City.
A break?
And then you ask the question after the break, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
28 minutes to 8. Our conversation this morning is on a report that was released after a survey on time use in the country. And we have Maureen Otieno, who's a gender, justice and women rights strategist at Oxfam, Kenya. Oganga Caneble, who is a program specialist, gender statistics advisor at UN Women. This one was produced in collaboration with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Oxfam, UN Women, World Bank and other partners. So we're looking at, so what does it mean? And Maureen has just laid it bare clear this morning. Women are subsidizing this economy because of what they do, even when they're considered not to be earning from it. Many are actually doing things that are productive. So let's continue that conversation shortly after City will ask his question after we hear the weather forecast and the traffic situation. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Otieno from Oxfam, Kenya, and Oganga Caneble from UN Women. As City comes into the question, let me just quote a UN Women country representative, Anna Mutavati, who says the disproportionate burden of unpaid care and domestic work on women can significantly limit their ability to engage in productive activities or participate in public life, and even contribute to the feminization of labor and of poverty. City, question.
I think what I'm about to ask, the response to it was probably said somewhere when I missed it. All this, to what end?
Good question. Very good question.
Take it.
So essentially, all this, it's a very good question that you've asked. All this to what end? So what we're looking at also as Oxfam is that, one, as a country, it's important that we are able to put in place policies that actually reduce the care burden that is there on women. So we're looking at as a country, our expectation and our hope is that from these statistics and findings, that the Kenya government, of course, and also other stakeholders in this process will develop policies that actually look at what exactly can we do to reduce the care burden on women in this economy. And I want to talk about also investing in care is essential infrastructure. By this, I mean, for example, if we're able to ensure that, for instance, in arid and semi-arid lands or in different parts of this country, that water is accessible in terms of access to piped water, that in itself reduces the amount of time that women are going to spend in accessing water. And we will not even go far. We can even come back to our close homes in the cities where we don't have that water coming into our pipes, Of course, we are buying water in some other country, in some other estates just here in Nairobi. And that first question is in terms of giving policies and developing policies that actually look at reducing and addressing the care burden. And secondly is talking about gender responsive budgeting, allocating money towards infrastructure, essentially, that is going to reduce the burden of care. That also talks about education policies, because we also have to ask ourselves, when women, as you've said, as you've rightfully quoted before, Eric, women are, or young girls are spending more time in unpaid care and domestic works, most of them will not have a chance to actually go to school. So the resultant effect of that is that we actually increase the gender parity gap. So we are asking ourselves, will the Kenya government now invest more of their resources in care is essential infrastructure? So why I'm saying this is because recently Oxfam constructed a study that looked at the gendered patterns of household care and how unpaid care and domestic work is looked at in the household. And it was quite interesting to note that, and this was done in the informal settlements, and 71% of men had never seen another man wash clothes in the informal settlements. And they said that 62% of men had never seen another man clean the house. Eric, how many men have you walked into cleaning their own house? And how would that stand by you in terms of how we've been socialized to see this as, you know what, it's okay to take up these responsibilities? And another man said that 38% of men in the informal settlements, that was around where we did our research, had never seen another man take care of young ones. Again, what we want to see is not only, as you've rightfully asked, I can see you smiling already, is of course investment in terms of budgeting, but also as a country is to shift the narratives around care and domestic work. Let it be okay for our brothers to stay at home, take care of the children, and it won't be seen that it's a taboo. It won't be seen that this woman has done something wrong. But at the end of it all, we are looking at it as a macro good, as a development good.
So obviously, all of this has come as a result of noting where there would be a problem.
Yes.
So I have a question. When we say that women are spending, because I'm looking at those numbers, and when we're saying that women are spending 3.5 to 4 hours giving care or taking care that is not compensated, essentially, does this mean, number one, that woman is part of a household where there's a partner who is outside doing something that would then bring in some kind of compensation? Or did we just look at who is at home at that point? Is her partner at that point outside doing something that would then consider to be productive by virtue of compensation? Is that happening at that same time? So that's one. And then the other side is, are we looking at a situation whereby we're saying, switch the roles and have a man come and be at home for that 4 hours that we are talking about? Or are we saying, create an environment where both of these individuals can be outside doing something that would bring about some kind of compensation based on productivity?
Yes, thank you. I want to give it a perspective. One, UN Women, in collaboration with the International Labour Organization, have been able to develop a policy tool known as 5R framework. So these 5 R's, the first R is to make, the society to recognize, the burden of unpaid care and domestic work. The second R is also for us to be able to redistribute, what you are just alluding to, so that we do not have the way the society is currently shaped in terms of only socializing, the generations or the young generation, that it is a woman's responsibility to cook. It's a woman's responsibility to take care of the kids, so that we are able to share these roles between the men and the women. And so when that burden is lessened, on the shoulder of the women, then they are also now able to participate in the, various economic activities like employment and all that. The third R is the reward. So this, of course, remember, within our society or within our economy, we have, of course, caregivers who are also paid and those that are not paid. So those that are not paid is in the context of within the household that you are talking about. That is, let alone the nannies and all that, of course, they're employed for pay. Then, of course, you look at now the other aspect of it in terms of now the reward, whereby you will also have the caregivers who are in the care sector, like those who are taking care of patients in the for palliative care, the nurses and all that, so that they are given proper pay that is commensurate with the work that they do as caregiving service.
I have a completely different take on this.
Yes.
Consider for a single second.
Yes.
What you've said that sparked off this thought process is the role that women play.
Yes.
Primary caregivers, yes, unrecognized. Reward, perhaps not based on a monetary system, but if it is, and I'm talking about African women, if it is the women who have this responsibility, it is the women then who have the greatest influence on their children.
Yes.
This attitude that men in an African context grow with, who do you think entrenches these particular perspectives within the household? Daddy usfanye. How is it that in that same household, where there are boys and girls, by the time a girl is 12, the things that a girl can do in the household, this caregiving that you speak of, that isn't rewarded or acknowledged, taking care of household chores, a young boy can do precisely everything else that girl does if given that opportunity. The development of the boy child and what the boy child becomes. Yes. We talk about reward, but we forget the component of what you call social capital. Look at how Africans value their mothers. I'm not saying fathers are not valued. Look at the way mothers are valued in an African context by these very children. You know why? They grow up and realize what this person did. Now, this reward is long-term. It may not be monetary, but it's valuable. And over time, it's not that it's not recognized. You only need to look at the position that women now occupy and the roles they play and the sound of their voice and the attention that is paid to it to tell you that there's been a change. But this issue of how the boy child is brought up, how do you address it? Because if they are brought up in a household where they are brought up to understand the equality in roles, when they are men, this issue of not washing, they consider it as a non-issue if they are socialized. Otherwise...
Yeah, and because then to ask the question, then we sometimes may not appreciate then just how much it lends then to policy, because policy doesn't make itself. Policy is created by human beings who've been socially developed over time in a certain way. So would you imagine a situation where a boy who becomes a man and I'm going to use the word left out, who was left out of responsibilities when he was growing up, socially,
domestic household responsibility.
Yes, exactly.
That kind of
Because they had
responsibility.
responsibility.
No, I'm saying this one that we're speaking of now, domestic responsibility. And here we are now trying to say, let us shift policy around how unpaid care work will be treated. And this is someone who's been left out of that, entrenched by what CT is talking about. How then do we start to move that when somebody has grown up 30, 40 years in a particular
And
space.
the foundation is what we're saying. What sort of person do you think this is going to be?
I think that's a very, very good question, because one of the things as we sit here, we need to ask and also understand is that gender is a social construct. It's a socially learned behavior. Again, I ask myself, who taught you to be the woman that you are? Who taught you to be the man that you are? These are socially learned behaviors that are learned through the religions, through our churches, through our mosques. They're taught through tradition. They're taught through education. And it actually breeds an internalized message that defines who you are. And you automatically assume that responsibility. You've asked one question: what does it become for those who are here today? And we're talking about recognizing care work, who have not really had the chance to appreciate that domestic work, isn't it? So what we need to do also is that we have a good statistical product, but we need to understand that we are going to have to work extensively more to shift the narratives around care work. This is now, again, I always ask myself, yes, we sit here as experts, but I need to break this message down to my grandmother in the village that, you know what, it is okay for my husband to stay at home and support as I go to work, isn't it?
Yes.
It is fine that he's watching the children today, and it is okay that he's washing the dishes. I have not done anything to him, isn't it?
Yes.
So the first thing that you also need to appreciate from this study is that there's going to be a lot of shift in narratives and norms, a lot of work on behavior change communication, that it's okay to see another woman going to work, and maybe at times it's a man adjusting, trying to find work, and watching the children is not a problem. So that's a thing, that gender is transmissible. It's about shifting norms.
I'm getting stuck here.
Yes.
A couple of different narratives and different principles being applied all at once. There's one, gender roles, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the recognition of the gender roles, and then the other are the reward for those roles. And then there's something that you said, the lens that we apply when you talk about work, the capitalist lens, which is not necessarily the social lens that we have as Africans, for example. So the capitalist way of looking at reward for work is monetary pay, right? Is that really the only reward and the only recognition that we give for all the work that's done? Are we saying that society does not recognize the contribution of caregivers? Are we saying that society does not recognize the contribution of housewives? That now we must start having a conversation in the society to start actually acknowledging and recognizing that these caregivers are contributing? Are we saying that right now in our Kenyan society, even as you went around all these counties, people did not recognize that the person who stays at home taking care of the elderly is contributing? That the person who stays at home as a housewife taking care of the children is contributing? Did they tell you that huyu hakuna kazi anafanya ama huyu hakuna value anaongeza kwa society? Is that what they said? Because even in those, for example, pastoralist communities that you went and spoke to, you found that very many women were left at home taking care of home and taking care of the elderly, taking care of the children. The men were not earning a salary per se, but they were out there looking after livestock. There's what we know as and recognize as, this is your contribution to this homestead, to the society. There's what the modern day world wants us to start categorizing as reward or recognition, and that is monetary value. Which is why when you say that it's about time we started, even encouraging men to stay at home and take care of the children so the woman can go and earn and work and earn, that is forcing us into another narrative that we don't necessarily have to go into.
Good question. So Caneble brought out something that he mentioned, recognition, the 5 hours of care.
Yes.
So in 5 hours of care, the first part is recognition. So as we sit here, we ask ourselves, do you recognize that care work? Is care work work? Is it work?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the first R. that we recognize that care responsibilities is actual work.
It's actually not just work. It's very important work.
It's exactly. So that's the first R,
Yes.
isn't it? Then there's another R where they talk about redistribute that work. So that's where it comes in by not only dads or men staying at home, but it's fine for us to redistribute those care roles. And it's okay for us to see these statistics that I mentioned earlier where men can also take up some of these roles at home, which men are taking up these days, isn't it?
Yes.
And women can free up some time, okay, to, as they get that support, women can free up some of that time to engage in other productive work, maybe pursue an education,
Right.
take up a cause,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Start up a small business, anaweza fungua, I can sell some few, anaweza fungua a small shop hapo nje, isn't it?
Yep.
It's all about freeing up time, isn't it? That's where the redistribution comes in. So quite interestingly, about the reward, it's not always a monetary reward. Okay? I want to bring you, for example, for perspective in your home. For instance, for those who have maybe 3 or 4 or more children, and they do have, what do you call this? You have a working mom, you have a working dad, and you have maybe a nanny. At times, a nanny is not there. The element of reward is, for instance, you see, okay, fine, my wife is taking on a lot of responsibilities. I am supporting as the husband. And it's easier for us maybe to get a washing machine that was going to save us on some time-saving labor infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's going to save us on some time. So if she throws in the laundry for an hour, she can be doing something else. That is also a reward.
Yes.
So again, that is also how you view reward. It's not always in terms of, I like your smile. It's not always in terms of money, but it's also in terms of time, labor-saving infrastructure.
Freeing up time.
Freeing up time.
But the issue that when you say redistribution, I'm hearing you saying swapping.
Interesting, it's not a swap. It's not a swap. Let me just correct that. It's not a swap.
Okay.
It's about us helping each other. In
And
that it's
and that could include that same thing, bringing a washing machine.
reward.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Bringing a helper in the house.
Exactly.
What is that?
Yes,
What
that
is
is
that?
that is still redistribution and it's still reward.
Okay.
It's not always a full swap.
So I
Yes.
don't see the major justification for the redistribution element of the 5 hours.
I wanted to weigh in on City's question by bringing a different analogy. So when you look at the socioeconomic system, one thing that really...
Whose socioeconomic system?
So the socioeconomic system, we have the social economy as well as now the economy in terms of the market economy, which is quantified. What we are not having any challenges with because it has got the reward, the pay in monetary terms and all that. So when you look at that system, you have, it's like an iceberg. So you have the 75%, which is mainly, the support provided in terms of the unpaid care and domestic work we are talking about here, and the 25%, which is what we see, at the surface. And so when you have, the 75% taken away, then definitely the 25% gets affected. And that's where we talk about the well-being of the family, the issues around the health, status of the family and all that. And when you were talking, one of the things that you read, Eric, was that the burden of unpaid care and domestic work also leads to feminization of poverty. I want to give an example. Recently, you must have been able to see one of the rulings from the Supreme Court saying that at the point of dissolution of a marriage, then the monetary contribution of both partners will be determined to decide in terms of the alimony or how the wealth that the household has created or the family has created is distributed. And these are one of the things that we say that they really continue to enhance the gender disparity. Because look at this woman who in the last, let's say 20 years, her role has been to take care of the children, while the man goes to work. But then when it comes to the point where now this
The
marriage...
man goes to paid employment.
That's the
So,
thing.
paid employment, thank you. Yes, so when it comes to the point where now, this marriage is coming to the end, then who becomes more vulnerable between these two?
If
The
you look at-
woman
yeah.
will be more vulnerable because the role that she's been playing has not, or the way also the policies and also the legislations that we've created
Yes.
will not have recognized.
When those children
Bas.
grow up,
Yes.
in
Will
the
they
community you come
recognize?
from, exactly. Who complains that they're being abandoned? Is it the mothers or the fathers?
I think I would really want to respond to that by looking at the facts in terms of statistics. And this is one of the reasons as to why we undertake the surveys, to be able to not only use a perception, but get to understand like what are the real facts. And
Yeah.
you said it very well that, for instance, when the children are young, when they are being taken care by the mother, over time, all the way up to when now they become adults. You say that there has been that particular, perception that probably the men would feel that they're kind of,
My friend, the perception, let me talk about reality. The mothers are so valued in this African society that we have. Why? That role that we're speaking of is recognized. When one gets older, then they see it with clarity. They said, oh, so this is what my mother actually did. If they have their own family, they see it with even greater clarity. And they even marvel at how the mother managed to do all these things. If the father participated, they will marvel about what the father did as well. So, acknowledgement, short-term, medium-term, long-term.
Let's say, for instance, if the fathers were also to be able to take care of these roles, right from the infancy stage of a kid's life. For instance, let's say at the point when the kids are still, being put on diapers, for instance, being fed and all that. If the fathers were able to, participate in doing some of these, gender roles or responsibilities, all the way to the, up to the stage where now the kids, they come of age. I think the narrative would really change in the sense that if you are a paid, you are a father who is in paid employment, let's say you walk away from your family, over time, that will be one of the contributions or the reason as to why the kids might want to think that the father has not been playing a key role
In the home.
in the home.
Let's go to the news first. This conversation has to continue in the next hour. Kenya's biggest conversation. We are talking about this new survey on time use in the country. And the conversation continues after the news, 8 a.m.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.